What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Unite Mike's VOD review series. This time we are tackling APAC East, a really incredible region. I have been looking forward to this one specifically. I think all three of these rosters that are making it to Worlds look really strong. I've had my eye on this region for quite some time, let's say, but I have brought on an incredible panel of analysts, hosts, casters, and everything in between. I got Spraggles, WonderChef, and Permasneeze all on here, so thank you so much to you three for joining me. Spraggles, why don't you just do a quick intro for everybody watching at home? Who are you? Why should they know you? And all that good stuff.
Hi, everybody. My name's Spraggles. I cast Pokemon Unite. I also play a lot of the game, and you might know me from casting the Championship Series. So I'm excited to see what some other regions that we didn't get to watch have in store.
Sweet. Chef?
I'm Chef. I've also casted UCS as an analyst, mostly, I suppose. And you should know me because I'm currently standing behind all of you in your houses, making sure that you don't stop watching.
Oh, my word. Okay, a threat to start the stream is what I like to hear. All right, Permasneeze, how about you?
Yeah, it's nice to be here. My name is Permasneeze. I'm from Singapore, and I usually cover the Asia side of things. Even before things got split to APAC East and APAC West, we were covering Asia region as a whole. I'm also a caster, and I sneakily play a lot of Pokemon Unite and get real frustrated sometimes. But that's just part and parcel of solo queue, right?
Yeah, listen, we've all made the solo queue tweets before.
Man.
It's all right.
It's rough. You just see them on the timeline, you just like and you move on. You know,
Yeah.
you don't think it's a common experience.
Yeah, it's like seeing your friends down bad likes. You just scroll past them. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
All right, never mind. It's not like the same thing, but a little bit maybe. All right, awesome. Well, we're going to be covering APAC East today. We're going to be watching the grand finals. Those two teams are going to be OMO Abyssian, I believe, as I'm saying that right. And they're going to be going up against Team Orangutan. For those who don't know, Team Orangutan was formerly High Five. They got sponsored, so High Five, the team, yep, that one, the one that did so incredibly well over in the ACL tournament, which was so sick. And then Old Guys are here as well. So, Sneeze, before we get into it, why don't you just give me a quick little intro, maybe to the region as a whole if you want to, but just like a little quick intro. What's the elevator pitch for all three of these teams before we kind of head into the grand finals?
So before I get into the teams, let me just talk about the region as a whole. So obviously this year there was a bit of a different approach. Last year we had APAC as an entire region. So India, East Asia, West Asia, they were all combined in one umbrella, right? And this year they made the decision, okay, we want to showcase more teams. We're going to split it into three, which makes for a very interesting dynamic because the teams that were more prominent were sort of left to APAC West. So a lot of the household names that we remember, like No Lucario, for instance, showing up at Worlds, they are under APAC West. Now, APAC East is a very interesting blend of Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, and the Philippines.
Okay.
So you essentially, it is the East technically, but it's kind of like far apart. And then you just have this interesting blend. And the most interesting thing is that it paved the way for a lot of new teams, specifically from Macau, Taiwan, these other regions. And you'll see that a lot in a lot of the names that you probably just have never heard before, never even seen in last year's any of the competitions. They're just showing up and competing. So coming into this season, there was a lot for us as talent and fans to kind of absorb because these teams and a lot of these players were completely new to us. So we just slowly developed personalities for them over the 3 months that we covered them. So that's APAC East. In terms of the three teams, now OMO Abyssinian, if any of you remember the winter tournament from 2022, this is AFR, baby. These are this is the core. Yeah, they basically took the age-old esports combo of getting Unite Philippines equivalent of a solid veteran engine, 3 members who have completed on lands before, and then they blend into literal like new players kids. So Tempest and Louise are the new recruits. You might remember Miva Schwa and J.R. Epson from their amazing run at Winter Tournament. I think they finished second. And
Tempest is a new recruit? They are
dude,
sick.
Tempest is like what? He's I don't remember the exact age. I think he's either 16 or 17.
Let's tell me.
He's like one of those like typical like cracked kids. Okay, no. He's a little okay. Thank goodness. I think the way I remember him was like he was like way younger or something. Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, but I remember basically they it felt like what they came out of nowhere. AFR after the winter tournament, they've always sort of been somewhat struggling to regain that level of footing and that level of standing. And it's nice to kind of see them come out on top. And man, they've looked so good. Now Orangutan, I think that's the team that most people who don't necessarily follow the region know the most. Very personable guys, mix of Hong Kong and I believe Macau and Taiwan. And Ikura, of course, how can you not love the guy? Brilliant captain. And most recently, they have recruited the lovable Ice, who was on No Lucario. So they swapped out one of their members. I think it was Wu Xuan, who they swapped out. And now Ice is on the team. So a bit of Singapore pride there for me, at least. This is a guy that I've been casting since the start of essentially competitive Unite in this region, at least. So Orangutan, definitely a lot more to talk about them later in the VOD. But old guys, this is a team that most people don't know. And some of the names you probably don't recognize unless you followed Philippines Unite for a long while. The fun thing about them is that, some of these stack names, they can get a little funny, but these are literal old guys. Like, in this day and age, you got Omo Abyssinian bringing in like these young crack kids and all these other teams, all these brilliant Pokemon Unite players. These guys, all 5 of them are dads. And the cool thing about them is that they've had literal dads and they've had limited success in other esports titles. So they played other MOBAs, they've tried to compete in other esports individually or separately in their own little pockets, but they didn't really find the same level of success as they have in Unite. And the coolest thing about them is, when you reach a certain age and your father, you've dealt with your child, it's the Unite pubs are nothing new to you, but the one thing you don't have time for is toxicity, right? So the whole team, their main criteria for joining the team was like, okay, you gotta play with us, and if there's any sign of toxicity or like your vibe is off, you're out of the team. Everyone's gotta agree that you vibe. So it's literally just a bunch of dads. They're having a good time. No toxicity allowed. No angstiness or anything. It's a really cool story, and it's cool to see them succeed.
That's sick. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a fun storyline with that team. Now, obviously, old guys, they ended up getting 3rd place in the regional finals. And if anyone was unfamiliar, we talked a lot about it in our APAC West preview. But for their format, you had a few qualifying tournaments. I think 3 in total, right, Sneeze? You had 2 monthlies and then an LCQ. And then from that point on, it was just a final bracket, and the top 3 teams make it to Worlds. So there we go.
So it's one of those cases where you played in April, and then if you qualified, you just kind of sit there and twiddle your thumbs until LCQ in June, where basically your chance at Worlds comes out. So I think for some of these teams, I believe OG and Old Guys, they were in the initial batch. Old Guys won April, and OG came up 2nd. So since then, in May, they were taking a hang back. There were some LCQ teams, but unfortunately, they didn't really make it very far. And yeah, we end up with what we have in. Small note before we start, I do want to point out, because Talon, for those of you who follow esports in Southeast Asia, very, very big organization, specifically centered in Hong Kong, right? Have a few different very successful teams in both Valorant as well as Dota. And it was honestly a bit of a disappointment that they didn't make it. I think having that organization tag is definitely, you think, okay, you're getting a lot more support now and you're getting a lot more prominence. So it definitely is a little bit of a dash to see them not in the running, but if you have the chance to watch the entire VOD, you'll see why the other 3 teams are just kind of a head and shoulder above them.
Yeah, they lost close 2-1 to Old Guys and lost a 2-1 to OG, like both qualification games. That's a tough run. That's a tough tournament run.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, we'll be jumping into the video here in just a second. Unless Chef or Spraggles, you have any questions about the greater storylines for Sneeze here about APAC East at all?
I mean, I don't think so. I'm curious about, what they play. That's the thing I'm always most curious about, is what different regions are bringing into games. But I know Chef had something I just heard.
I was just gonna say, how do you not get confused? Because every single name starts with the letter O.
Yeah. That's what we were joking about as well. We were like, okay, there's no way Talon make it because we need to have the all O like qualifiers and whatnot.
The OO region. I love it.
It was not part of the script, Wink.
Yeah, absolutely not. That is super funny. I love that you called that out. That also was one of my favorite bits that Spraggles and Deuce Next did at regionals this year, was when they came up and Spraggles was like, oh look, we qualified, that's you and I, the old guys. I laughed quite a bit. But no, these players taking the cake. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's jump into the game. And then, so we've covered a couple of East regions, but for Spraggles the Chef, since you're jumping in, the only banned Pokemon in this tournament was Zacian. So every
Yeah.
other Pokemon was available for play. And yeah, we're going to jump into draft. So this is grand finals between Orangutan and OMO Abyssian. Both of these teams have technically qualified for Worlds at this point. However, Orangutan is coming from losers bracket side, so a bracket reset would need to happen if they are going to take down Abyssian. And it's only a best of 3 in Eastern region format instead of best of 5s in Grands. But
Not a huge thing, but I believe it's Omo Abyssinian.
Abyssinian.
Yes. We had a whole like sit down together in like me, JJ, and Moonboy, and we had to repeat that and make sure we got it right. It's a bit of a mouthful for sure.
It's a tough one.
Par for the
It's-
course. I'm probably going to mess it up for the rest of the tournament. It's usually how it goes. But all right. Cool. Wow, a
So
Glaceon
pretty standard.
ban.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Pretty standard stuff for picks, but the Glaceon ban feels targeted. Is there a player on
So,
Orangutan?
I think it was this period of time where essentially Glaceon, for us at least, I'm not sure about you guys, but it was basically first pick, first ban material. Like it was not.
It was bugged still.
It was the bug.
It was
yeah,
bugged.
yeah.
It was bugged still, and there was this. So it was the weirdest thing
okay.
because basically coming into this tournament, everybody I think had the premonition that we can't let this Pokemon come into play. The crazy thing is, the few times it actually showed its face, it kind of got slapped around. So
Really?
everyone was basically, and you might see this later on, but or maybe if you watch some of the other series, but when it does get let through, it wasn't this like auto win machine that everyone was assuming it was. So essentially, it was a situation where everyone was like using a ban on it, and then they would just get Lapras every single time on whichever team picked first. And then the Glaceon, even when it came out, it kind of felt like a unanimous reaction from everybody playing like, maybe we don't need to ban this. Yeah.
No
But
Umbreon on
Yeah,
Orangutan
so this
side.
is-
Umbreon must have not been out yet.
it was
it
not
was.
out. It was not out.
Wait, was it?
It was not in this tournament, no.
It was in
Yeah.
Japan's though. So was
Yeah.
your tournament before Japan?
I don't necessarily remember
That would be
whether
the only
Umbreon
way
was,
time
like,
would work.
fresh enough.
I
But
refuse to believe
essentially, I didn't see a single Umbreon, so I'm just gonna assume
Okay.
either it was just not viable at the time or it wasn't like allowed in yet.
Yeah, that has to make sense. Okay. Well, then these bans are making a lot of sense. I mean, Abyssinian building just a full Death
There we
Ball
go.
comp. You're running
Yeah.
you're running double defender Venusaur with a Clefable.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Also, from watching these other Eastern regions, Clefable is like
Oh yeah.
support god. Like if
Yeah,
you Hoopa's a permaban and then you go after Clefable as much as possible. They barely
Yeah.
play Blissey or Comfey. It's
That's like the
Clefable
second
over
option.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really I guess they like to adopt this effort, especially since Lapras was so strong, right? And Trevenant
Yeah.
was in the position that it was in. They really like to basically utilize this Clefable to make sure they had a ball running. I think old school sort of balling up. And it's funny that they do this again. I think I called it out when I was casting. It's like Schwa also happens to be part of AFR, who were the original sort of, they were either score comping you or death balling you, and that was their go-to, right? So
One of
it's
the
fun.
two. Okay.
Yeah, it literally so like it's so natural for them to come back into a new orientation of this exact lineup. So the really hype thing about this particular match was clearly you can see on your screen Greninja. I don't know whether you can remember what pocket of time in Unite this was, but Greninja was not good anymore. Greninja had his time to shine like last year, and everyone was playing the Surf build, and it was insane. They were doing like basically execution chains and whatnot.
Is this not
and-
Surf Greninja?
I no, I mean I'm sure I don't exactly remember, but the thing is like at this point in time, the Greninja is not something that anyone is picking. Up till this point, throughout the 3 months, nobody picked this Pokemon. This was very clearly a Xingdi special.
Okay.
I remember like shouting his name, playing the Greninja last year, and I saw it again, and that's why both of us are losing our minds. But like this is like a homage pick kind of situation.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a bit of a throwback pick. I like it.
A bit
I
of a
like it.
throwback pick.
All right.
Yeah, we had a little bit of that at North America regionals, a few Greninjas as a little bit of a throwback pick. And now we've got the Lucario buffs. So I wonder if at Worlds we're going to see some old school Lucario mains bring it back out.
Mhm.
Just bring me back to the good old days of Lucario top path, and then just get me that Venusaur on the petal dance again. It's yeah, that was the right when Blissey came out too, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, we can Bliss assistance and make him a machine," and that's just it.
What a world.
So I have
Yeah.
a question based on, I mean, obviously it's a sample size of one, but we had around this time, I think we had like a super heavy emphasis on like speedsters and just like assassin type roles, I guess you could say. But I don't really see too much of it obviously in this game. Is it just because it's a death ball, or is that just not something that was happening in the region?
So one thing that we saw, so the thing with APAC is that you're always gonna find players within teams that just are trying to find a reason to pick Pokemon like Absol or Zoroark. I think that does sort of show its face eventually. But the trend for this particular tournament, I think in June, was that you'll notice a certain set of components within each team, right? So Orangutan was actually one of the outliers to this, but Omo Abyssinian, they're following the script. So essentially, the script is that you would have a very, very set sort of backline damage dealer caster. So someone like a Chandelier, someone like a Mew, and then you would just buff up on like tanks. So it's either Hoopa, like Zoinks pointed out, or the Clefable, and those are the top two options. You rarely, if ever, put something else, and if you would, it would be like, for example, the Eldegoss, or in this case, Ice. He's a bit of a Wigglytuff specialist, so this is a pick that's a bit more endemic to him. But these components on Omo Abyssinian are basically on par with what you would see with a lot of other teams. It's just Orangutan that are a bit zany with what they pick. I think while we were casting, we noticed as well that Orangutan, they weren't as fond of these tanky sort of defender Pokemon like the Lapras, like the Trevenant. They had Ikura, who was adept at playing them, and that was about it. And most of the time, Ikura was on that Hoopa duty, right? So
Gotcha.
in the case where they pick Hoopa, you know, it's very unlikely that they get a Trevenant. Maybe Ice pilots it sometimes, but that's kind of where Orangutans stand apart.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Pretty late invade when Greninja starting to pop off. I think I think bottom path like four player rush is gonna be like against any team that's scaling is just so strong. Like Venusaur's probably gonna have a really late clear. They're probably gonna go to bottom path because of it. Like it seems like a really good counter to any late game comp. I think we're gonna see a lot of that at Worlds.
Yeah, there was this small note. There was this ongoing trend in Orangutan's game thus far that every single time that BKZ went surging strikes, he would lose. But every single time he went wicked strike, he would win. So we were basically just keeping track. We're like, oh, yes, Orangutan won the first game. Yeah, there was this ongoing like situation. But they really Urshifu at this point in time was very highly prioritized as well, just because of how explosive it can be, and obviously adding a element of secure that you lose a little bit with the Greninja. I mean, there is the surf, but it's not as easy for him to just in one fell swoop. Yeah, I mean, they just combine both of those together, and you really can't contest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. One thing that I was a bit I guess casting this game for the first time, I remember being a bit concerned about the Wigglytuff, and I still feel this way. I don't know whether you guys feel the same as well, but I just think Wigglytuff is such a hard support to pull off. It really relies a lot on in my opinion, outplaying your opponent. So it's not that Hoopa or any other support is simple, but it relies heavily on just making the most out of your tools. Whereas there's a certain element of you can kind of throw out your heals or like your moves a bit more willy-nilly as other supports. Where if as a Wiggly you run in and you don't land your sleep, you're just kind of screwed. So that was something that I was concerned about. And yeah, you start to see the early Greninja advantage starts to be wavered out by just the tankiness that this lineup on Omo Abyssinian provides, right?
Yeah, because he's the assassin.
I think if I was like casting this game, I would have like mentioned that. I mean, that Wiggly's definitely got to be kind of like in the defender role, right? Like they are not a very tanky team, which is pretty interesting. I feel like when we see Wiggly more, it's like in like a defender and a half comp. If that does make sense, right? I feel like that's when we see it most. I could be wrong.
You usually see it bottom path because that's where you're going to have a mage, right? So the special attack damage just getting buffed by sleep is usually the only reason you're warranting it. But
yeah, for them or at least in APAC East so far, every single time we've seen it picked, it definitely has felt like somewhat of a response, specifically in terms of Starlight Recital. So every time you see these CC heavy comps potentially, like you get a Trevenant and a Lapras crashing into you, that's where you see the Wiggly for that basically get out of jail free card in the team fights. With that being said, I think that was kind of what we were concerned about as well, because like you said, it's usually like a defender and a half, which means that having it as your primary defender could leave you in a little bit of trouble and with a bit of a weaker front line. And this is something that, I mean, there's a reason why Lapras was basically first pick, first ban, right? It's just
Pokemon's
so,
good.
it was so dumb when it came out. Like it just look at he's just 3v1 contesting. We were like, there's no way he gets away with this, and they ended up taking him down. But it
It's
was
a level
just a joke.
13
Like,
Greninja at 430, by the way.
I was gonna mention that this Greninja's farming up like crazy.
Yeah, he's got to
compared
pop
to
it
the rest
off.
of them.
yeah,
I can't believe
it's classic. I don't know how much you guys follow High Five / Orangutan, but this is classic Shingdi stuff. Like
Sure.
this guy has been carrying. He's the de facto carry from the central area kind of guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That
And
makes sense.
if I'm remembering right, you were saying that Orangutan is coming from the losers, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but we didn't actually get to see Omo Abyssinian basically dominate through most of the broadcasted games. So when we did finally see them, we're just like we see the record, right? We see the bracket and we're like, damn, these guys look like they're really, really solid. And then we see them play, we're like, oh my lord, these guys I feel like they're on a whole other level. You'll see it in like the team fighting and stuff. I think it's very together, and the front to back is really clean, especially
Yeah.
with how they just kind of circle around the Clefable and make the most use of this from this game one. I think you can kind of tell that, they're all on the same page, and there's no one who has a different idea from what everyone's collectively going for.
Yeah.
I mean, score-wise, it still looks fine, but I remember sort of feeling like, man, Orangutan, they're kind of in a rough spot here.
Well, that's what a death ball feels like, right? It just feels like,
Yeah.
okay, this other team is keeping up, but you just know as the match goes on, they're just going to hit this absolute brick wall of Abyssinian here.
Abyssinian doesn't have much secure, though. Like, you have Chandelure ult and Venusaur ult are, like, kind of your two best options. But outside of that,
you could probably flip it in their face, especially
Absolutely.
with a Dark Bear. Yeah.
Yeah, Dark Bear, Greninja.
Mhm.
Also, we were talking about Wiggly before. I mean, enjoy it while it lasts. Umbreon exists. I don't think that Pokemon is allowed to exist if Umbreon exists. Like, it's a rough spot.
A little bit of power
You could
creeping.
only pick it without.
Yeah.
If you got the Umbreon or if it was banned, that's the only time you could see Wiggly, because the counterplay is just too disgusting.
In Sneaky Summit, we were seeing the only time we would ever see like Blissey is if you were on orange side and you picked Blissey Umbreon as your two picks. Like there's so many Pokemon that are just so shut down by that ult. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a really disgusting out. But yeah, I think Orangutan, they definitely pick for this secure, and yeah, there's Ice with Sleep. But I mean, you're starting to see the situation, even when Orangutan are trying to take a fight, it doesn't necessarily go well, because you have the Wiggly running in, but that's your main front line. And the Death Ball just survives, because you'll see later on at the end of the screen, at the end game stats, but JR Absent is just pumping heals to the whole gang, right? They're not under any threat whatsoever.
Well, I'm gonna rewind this. I think this was just a great call by Omo. Like, they took this fight. They're the ones that tried. That's a brilliant play. I mean, they baited them into the Reggie, and they just jumped on them. Like, I think that's exactly
what is that
you got.
Greninja Unite? Go back to that Greninja
Unite.
Unite. That is chaotic. Like, yes, he hits multiple members, but that's a full health team. What is the point of throwing this Unite move?
Get him, fam.
No, so the crazy thing is, like, at this point, like, the entire team of Orangutan just has kind of been beating on Omo Abyssinian, but the sustain is just ridiculous, and this is what the comp was waiting for the entire time, right? I think what we were discussing is that, okay, they have the Hooper factor and they first picked it, and the advantage you have over this slow, clunky, tanky team is that you can maneuver the map a lot better, but that didn't really come to fruition. There were some better early rotations from Xingdi on the Greninja, and that's how he got so farmed. But when you're fighting them head on like this, it's never gonna work out for you. I mean, like just trying to fight into the ball. Nah.
That's a sick surf, though. That's a very good surf.
So I'll be honest, like, I'm a big fan of Orangutan, but the one player that I'm perpetually like somewhat skeptical about is Zire, because I think he has moments where it feels like he sort of fumbles a little bit on the attackers, and with the way with mages, if you step out of line just a little bit, it's very easy for you to be picked off. So in that moment, he kind of proved me wrong, like with the surf and stuff. That was insane. Like, as a turnaround, I remember going like, oh man, sorry, I didn't understand your game. So
it's a good Pokemon to play a little more aggressive, though. He's got a lot of escape package kind of options.
Yeah, coaching, right? I mean, you can pull that one out of the pocket in the worst case scenario.
Ultimate. Oh, but this is. I mean, that's why you pick Wiggly. That's why you pick Wiggly in that one spot. There you go.
That was a good Wiggly for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, right? Because if they find you in one of these alleyways and they crash in, it's like you only have Starlight to save you.
Wait, why didn't you stack up to 50? Like, that's
He wanted-
irrelevant.
I think he wants a double.
No,
I'm
because he
pretty sure
wanted
he's
to
trying
double dunk.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, you're out.
Well, that's
Okay,
late
I
now.
was outmathed. You're correct. That is the better
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, basically, they run out of time to take a team fight.
Mm-hmm.
At they like you said, they could have ripped, but they kind of got baited into the bottom Reggie fight. And then at that point in time, that was the first Hoopa Unite being used already. So it's kind of like, okay, you full committed to this area, you're not gonna get anything out of it. And that
Yeah.
was sort of a wrap for game number one. We were like, oh man, the wicked strike losers feels bad, man.
Mm-hmm. Wait,
Yeah.
strike losers.
Yeah,
That's
DK, yeah.
tough angle.
They didn't really, yeah, they didn't really make it happen. But I mean, you kind of see what happens to. We were hyped, of course, with the Greninja, but just take a look at the healing done from JRF. So it's absolutely
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Clefable's
not even
very
fu-
good. I really
Yeah.
do think it's so underpicked in the West. I think it's really, really strong.
I think the main gripe is just the Unite move is so unpredictable, right? You can make an argument for if you're high skill enough, you can think on the fly and think about the best way to use it, but it's just uncomfortable. Like having that reliable option on some other Pokemon is definitely a lot more comfortable.
Sure.
But the Moonlight is just it's kind of gross. It's kind of nasty, and Gravity
Moonlight's
can really
gross.
mess with.
Gravity's
some of
insane
the-
into this enemy
Gravity's
comp.
insane.
Like, it's
Yeah.
good. It's
I
good.
will say, I
Really
think Almo Abyssinian drafted so well this game that it felt like their strategy just worked completely. How
Yeah.
good though on the other side would it have been for like a hyper voice Sylveon? That seems like that
Oh,
would be ridiculous
yeah.
with the
That
Wiggly
would've been
too.
nice.
Mm.
You could run
Yeah.
Mystical Fire into this comp too, I think.
Yeah,
Like into
I think
Lapras,
Sylveon would've just been
Venusaur.
great.
Like, I think both are great.
yeah.
Yeah, Sylveon top lane, I think we're gonna see a lot of at Worlds. Secret
This
Oh, for real?
was the height of Lapras, right? This was pre
Yes.
any nerf.
Uh-huh.
Oof.
Yes.
This Pokemon was so strong.
All of us were like, we tested it ourselves, obviously, in our games, and then we are just like, man, this is there's no way this sees the light of day, right? But then after we sort of realized about the Glaceon situation as well, we're like, okay,
Uh-huh.
we're gonna have a little bit of a situation.
Yeah.
I think this the entire sort of tournament ended up sort of evolving into which team will get Lapras, whoever. It's between one of the defenders, right? It really became a very heavy emphasis on defenders.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's I think every region right now is
Yeah.
having that's always going to be the initial part of the ban phase. Sneeze, can you remind me? So we were talking about this in a couple other regions. Side selection in how Eastern regions do it is APAC
Right.
East. Is it loser pick side,
I think
or do
it
they just flip?
I believe it just flips.
Okay,
I
interesting,
believe
because
it
that
just
is
flips.
different than Japan. Japan does
Yeah.
loser pick side, which I
So
think is really
the
cool.
final game of a best of three, if it gets there, is a natural coin flip. So it reverts
Right
back to
after the
initial
reset,
coin
it goes to coin flip.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, because at that point they have the exact same win loss, so there's no way to
Wait,
set
how
them
does-
on either side.
How does Japan do it?
They do in a best of three? Whoever
Yeah.
loses gets to pick what side they want to be on draft, but initial pick
Oh.
goes to higher seed.
So it's
So-
like a card
Right.
game.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're coming, so in this case, the initial pick will go to Omo because they came from winners.
Right, and then because Orangutan lost, it in theory it would be Orangutan's side selection, but.
Right.
I
okay.
don't know, but if you're saying they
Interesting.
just flip, then yeah, I mean that's how the West does it. That's how it
Right.
just flips after game one, back
Right.
and forth.
Yeah.
But
I think that's not as complicated as well. So.
from a TO perspective, it's probably so much
Yeah.
easier. Like you're
Yeah.
probably having to deal with so many more problems on the other end. But okay, cool. Let's watch this next draft. I really am fascinated by these drafts. By the way, we were talking a little bit before broadcast. This is another situation where both these teams were qualified for Worlds, so that might be where the Pocket Greninjas kind of showcasing and stuff and
Yeah.
things like that. But yeah.
I think that definitely.
Yes. These are those kind of grand finals. However, money's on the line, right?
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
15,000 for.
I need to give me a moment. Let me just
It's
find
like
out
definitely
here.
cash for sure.
Because I always think about that, but then when there's actually a significant, like between first and second, there's usually a big chunk of money. However,
Yeah.
you can often see, maybe not often, but you do see when teams just kind of go, we're getting second, right? And they just sort of play out the series. You kind of see that, like live especially.
Yeah.
Worlds is definitely the grand prize. That's true. Oh yes, please. Do I get to see Tempest Snorlax?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Oh
Well, that's
no!
lost.
I think they pick it. I think they pick it eventually. I'm not
Okay.
sure whether they do it in the grand finals.
Yes.
If you
like
guys,
flashbacks to Blossom at Worlds last year. Like for real. Like
Oh.
Tempest Snorlax is sick. It's so fun.
Oh,
to watch.
dude, this dude, he will hit a level 3 timing, invade your jungle, along with JR Epson on the Hoopa, and it's just like absolutely. You imagine you're like just trying to clear your jungle as like a 3-stage evolution Pokemon, and these two bouncers just show up and ruin your day, and they'll stay there. They don't care. They'll just give complete EXP to their laners. Yeah, I think he picks it here because I remember seeing it in the grand finals. It would be a shame if he doesn't. But yeah, so as you can kind of see. Okay, I'm lying. I'm just lying. As you can kind of see, the main sort of priority in terms of attackers are Chandelier or Mew. Whichever team gets one, the other team will just kind of snap that up. I think it's interesting because Omo Abyssinian, they essentially used the Venusaur somewhat like a frontliner as well, pseudo attacker / frontliner. And it's important to note that this Dodrio was one that was an absolute terror from Schwa. So in prior matches, in prior series, this was being first banned from him. So it got to, they were banning Glaceon, and then it got to a point where they're like, we can't deal with this dude's Dodrio, because you'll start to notice a little bit of a trend here. Omo Abyssinian, they like to collapse. So they like to have multiple sort of facets in their draft that can basically attack you from different angles and get you in that tricky spot. That's kind of what Orangutan came in out of the gates with the Wigglytuff with, right? You have the Lapras Express as well as the Trevenant. They have similar components here as well with the potential, Unite move coming out from Dojo. Obviously you have the Blastoise, which is huge team fight as usual, and same component in the Trevenant. So that's kind of what Omo Abyssinian really like to do with their lineup.
Trevenant Blastoise like Unite move like end game teamfight combination is disgusting. It's so good. That's really tough to deal with. Also, Absol, kind of a pseudo counter to Dodrio. Spriggles, you play a lot of Dodrio. Do you agree with this?
Well, first off, literally everything counters Dodrio. I don't know why this is, but every single Pokemon that is ever released actually counters Dodrio for some reason. They all do. Absol can counter it, but I do have to say, I wish it wasn't the case. I feel like this is an absolute troll pick at this point.
Of what?
The Absol or the Dodrio?
Okay.
Absol. Yeah, Dodrio's not at all. Dodrio's a top tier pick, especially in the right hands. But Absol, I just feel like it gets countered way too hard by too many things. It's not powerful enough. They're lucky it's not into Lapras, because Lapras counters it so incredibly hard. But yeah, I don't know. It's a rough Pokemon, man.
But okay, that being said, if APAC East could have like a team mascot, I think it would be Absol.
Yeah.
The amount this region plays this Pokemon, they love this thing. I don't know why.
Even back in the day, all along, like Absol is like that pick that you just kind of, it's all reliable, but it's just,
I remember prepping for Worlds last year and being like, wow, they really play Absol like literally every game. Okay.
Yeah, they're like every single time their backs are against the wall, they're like, you know what time it is, we gotta bust out our boy. They really sort of capitalize a lot on the, I guess, how disorganized the early game can be. And you know how, if you guys have played against Absol, it can get real menacing if he gets 1 or 2 KOs, especially early on, right? Then suddenly you see him with 3 level advantage, he's just crushing you in the top side. But same situation as a lot of these other speedsters, one misstep and you just get taken down. So yeah, I mean, Xingdi, this is a specialty of his. It just kind of felt like a bit of a roadshow for him in this grand finals. He basically picked all the specialties. Gotcha. So yeah.
First submission. Hold on, what are we watching? Okay, hold on.
So once again, speaking of signatures, Siggies, as I like to
make
say,
your defense for this region, Permasneeze.
This is
what's going on?
This is a BKZ special. Now, I don't claim to describe his build as anything super insane, as
great
beautiful
block,
body, from Ikora. And it's not enough there, of course, because like you said, Absol is just a bit of a feels bad sometimes when you get caught out. But BKZ, if you just take a look at their lineup, one thing they really lack is control. They have the slow bro, but apart from that, Blissey doesn't really bring much. You have a bit of that coming out from whatever the Chandelier chooses to go for, but the Absol doesn't bring much of that to the table, right? So I think that's kind of his own way of making sure that he has it as well. It's a good way of sort of holding down an otherwise sort of elusive Pokemon in the dojo and maybe submitting them out of the Hoopa reset. I think that
Yeah,
was what we
that's
thought
a
the
good.
idea was.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
still a good play for sure. You also have Ice Egg Bomb to try to pull that off. Surf can kind of do it, but you gotta thread a needle to make that happen. You don't see that happening very
It's a little tough. It's a little tough for sure. Yeah. So I think this entire game number 2, we were basically just discussing, okay, which one of these speedsters from the central area is gonna pop off. And even though Shingdi was the one with the early KOs, once again it's Schwa, and this didn't really come as a surprise to us because we're like, man, okay, at this point Schwa was an unstoppable menace, right? He essentially, the initiations this man was pulling off, like in the team fights, he would find the perfect angles to just slam everyone into one corner and set
Yeah.
him up perfectly for his tanks. And it was just an absolute terror. So I mean, cute stuff from JR Epson trying to get the steal off, but it's a bit of sunk cost. If you get there, it's huge. If you don't, it literally doesn't matter.
Well,
Yep.
I have a question about Schwa's dojo. I see where it's on Tri Attack right now. Are they usually like a Tri Attack player, or are they like one of the Flex dojo players?
Oh, they're flex. Like basically, it switches up with depending on the game, which we found very impressive because I think there were 1 or 2 games where he played jump kick, and he was Mario Brothersing it up. Like it was pretty insane. He just went stomp on all of them, and we're just like, how's he getting away with this? Like, there's no, is someone gonna stop this man? The answer was no. Nobody stopped him. It was rough. They decided to ban it afterwards, I think.
Is Absol Potion? No,
I
he's just getting
think so.
lifesteal, I think. Or
Is
is he
not?
actually?
I think he was. We can probably go back and have a look later on, but
Yeah, I need to
Absol
see.
Potion isn't necessarily uncommon.
Huh, okay.
Yeah.
It actually
Alright.
is a thing. Potion Absol, strangely, yeah, it's a thing.
Okay.
Because sometimes you just need a little bit of extra oomph. Like Absol is just like, it just melts like butter, right? He can kind of slice you up real quick, but at the same time, if you just look at him wrong, he just disappears into a pot of water as well. So sometimes
Okay.
just that additional bit of potion can actually get you through some of these early initiations and early
Yeah.
engagements, and that's the most important thing for Absol. You just want to roll and never look back.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Man, Chandelure is
Yeah.
so flippin' strong in these early fights. Like they're already at 10 in
Yeah.
5 minutes. Like this Pokemon's so freaking good, especially at this
Yeah.
point. This is pre-nerf, obviously. So
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think we'll see it? I mean, I'd love to kind of pick everyone's brain with what you think we're going to see with some of these balance changes, because obviously we talked about Wiggly. I think Wiggly is a non-starter, even though it got a buff. I think with Umbreon in
Not
the
enough.
game, it's like no way. But that's another one. Chandelure got some nerfs to every ability that is the meta. So I'm curious what happens.
I also
go ahead,
Go ahead.
Chef. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say I also think like with Inteleon being around, and there's just so many different options for that role that I feel like we see less Chandelure, but I could be totally wrong.
I think the big 3 you're gonna see are Inteleon, number 1. I think Inteleon's by far the most popular attacker. And then after that, we see Mew, A9, and then Chandelure. I think is how I would align those. If I was.
Are people doing liquidation or are they doing snapshot? Liquidation, right?
Liquidation
Oh,
for
both
the
are
most part, but I've seen both. I have seen people try both for sure.
Because I remember seeing people sort of run snapshot, and it felt like just kind of a more susceptible version of Decidueye at times. Like I'm actually quite surprised to hear you guys say that, because I'm a little worried, like especially in these sort of higher stakes games where everybody knows how to execute a proper jump and get on the back line.
You know how it's real easy to hit a snipe shot? You just mean look them. And then they literally can't go anywhere, and then you just line it up again and again.
Disgusting. That's true.
It's such a strong Pokemon. Like Inteleon's really, really good. You could run either. I think it depends on the team comp you're headed into. It's like it's a composition that's easy to hit. You run it. Fell Stinger literally means you just have criticals all the time, always.
Yeah,
like,
the mobility is
kind of
insane.
It's on like infinite cooldown. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Speaking of your list, what about Venusaur? Would Venusaur be on your list as well? I feel like I saw a million of those recently.
Of attackers? I don't think so. But I mean like a central, like jungler, for sure. Like I think we're gonna see so much Venusaur, but I don't think we see it in the attacker role very often. Like
I think Venusaur specifically, maybe not Venusaur for Petal Dance or whatnot, but Venusaur is just to me, it's always one of those feel good Pokemon. It always feels good to just toss out a Solar Beam, in my opinion. Like, I don't think any attacker player in the world is like, don't give me Venusaur in a situation where it might be picked for them. So I think it might come out as comfort, but in terms of like being a main starter, like some of the others that Zoinks mentioned, that'll probably be a bit on the back burner, maybe a little bit of a sneaky surprise out in one or two of the games.
We did an
You
NA
know, it's like
tournament, and
nice,
it
like
was
kind of
every game.
stacked.
Yeah, we did an NA tournament, and Venusaur was in every single game. It
Oh,
was,
Yeah, it's getting really popular.
yeah,
in
it's
NA.
so strong.
okay.
However, like I said, I think you play a jungle. Like you give a first rotation over to your Urshifu or whatever, and then after that, you give it every single clear. In my personal opinion. Oh wow, Orangutan just decided to flip on him with it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this situation was basically that Omo Abyssinian, they have the lead at this point and beautiful surf. But at this point, essentially, it's just a complete mess in the Rayquaza pit. And it's of course, it's just Slowbro manages to secure
It
it.
was like a
So I
boosted
think,
auto attack too, I think.
yeah, it was a booster auto attack. So we were basically looking at it where like throughout most of the game, obviously it looked like the Absol was kind of out of it, but there was a bit of magic there. Obviously, OG they just kind of came through. It looked like they were
Let's
losing
go
the
back
fight.
to this moment here.
It's
follow
actually
this.
hilarious.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Absol gone, of course. Already went down.
Yeah. Of course.
Hoopa stuns like 3. Huge Mew surf to stun 3 as well, but just he didn't rip it quite in time the other direction.
Yeah, it was a Bliss assisted.
Oh, wait. Where did that Mew
assisted...
Solar Beam go? Where did Mew Solar Beam go?
Did he miss?
It looked like it auto targeted us somewhere else. So he surfs 3. He agility's back. Dodrio tries to knock up multiple ones. Lessos comes in. Yeah, I think he misses.
He's like, is he off the mark?
He just might.
Yeah, just too slow.
You're right,
yeah, I think it went off a bit too slow.
Missed. But yes, maybe, I think you're right. I think the Slowbro got it beforehand.
It was definitely very thematic. Yeah, it was very thematic for Ikura, the captain, to get it with a Bliss assisted Slowbro auto attack. Like that's literally the Pokemon that he's. If not Snort, it's funny because both of these teams are essentially big Snorlax pickers. It's a very specialty pick of Ikura's as well back in ACL. Gotcha. I think one of the things that I sort of noticed watching back these finals is quite funny because the whole story of Orangutan and how they rose to prominence is they initially came out in APAC last year and they shocked everybody, right? Everybody had the Philippines teams, the Indonesian teams high on the list, no Lucario as well. And they basically came out as RJ Gaming. Nobody had heard of them and they absolutely stunned us all. And that was basically shortly after Winter Tournament, right? When the sort of UCS was kicking off our region.
Right.
And at that point, AFR were basically sort of falling off a little bit. Post-winter, it felt like they couldn't quite hit their stride again. You know, these Philippines players, Dan, Miva, Shua, JR Epson, we really didn't see them for the good half of the 2022 season. So it's very sort of thematic that in this moment or in this particular regional finals broadcast, we see them basically come out of what feels like nowhere, just completely dominant. Basically, RJ Gaming, the original RJ Gaming. It was a really cool story to see. And especially with these new players that we never seen before, Tempest especially very impressive. So I think if I'm not wrong, I believe Orangutan end up winning this second game.
It looks like it looks like they won.
Yeah, it was honestly a really stupid ending. So
yeah, that's a close ending though.
It is.
That's crazy. Yeah,
the Absol contributes nothing, just like in solo queue.
Oh,
okay,
I mean, yeah, but yeah, that's a.
I can say that because Shingdi and Akura are my boys. They're my boys.
Okay,
so I don't they ain't gonna come at me for it.
Sure.
They know I love them.
Fair enough. All right, let's jump to the next game here. Cool. All right, it's back to Slowbro Glaceon. Yeah, I guess Glaceon just got auto ban from a lot of teams.
The Slowbro as well, essentially. So it was literally these two bans for the large duration of the tournament because anytime you would let Slowbro through, I mean Orangutan, they didn't necessarily have the smoothest ride in the previous game, but it was, I mean the Slowbro is a very, very comfortable pick for a lot of these tank players.
Oh, it's the best defender by far, I think. Yeah. Well, Lapras is also very good, but okay. Yeah. I mean, if you can ban one and take the other, that's a good spot. Chandelure, Hoopa makes sense on the other side. The other two strongest in that situation. Now, does Ice pick another Wigglytuff?
Yeah, I think they sort of I kind of like think that or at least our presumption was that this dojo pick was basically a snatch pick. They didn't really want to let Shua have his hands on that again, and that was reasonable. Like Xingdi also had really good performances on the dojo, but if you're just
Oh.
comparing Shua and Xingdi, it wasn't even close. Like Shua was immensely dominant on that Pokemon.
We finally
Yeah,
see
so
Zoroark. That's cool.
and we finally get the Snorlax. Zoinks is
Nah,
waiting
I
for
know.
this
I've been
one.
wanting it too. Ikura
Yeah.
on Sableye. Now, if correct me if I'm wrong, but okay. All right, so
Yeah,
we're getting into
yeah.
some
Wait,
we're getting into
okay.
some nonsense here in this
Okay.
matchup.
So I need to defend and this is something I was avoiding talking about, but I think it's important in terms of the context since we want to sort of get the fullest picture. Spriggles, I'm not sure whether you're wrong. I think WonderChef heard this, but essentially in this moment, one of the main things with APAC East is that you're basically playing from the Philippines to Taiwan/Hong Kong, right? So there's a pretty big ping disparity and usually some lag on either one side or the other. So I think, or at least from what we know, this is something that was publicized by OG themselves. In this final game, they essentially lost the coin flip for the server, so they would be playing with a bit of lag disadvantage. So our understanding was that in this game number 3, OG basically went like fuck it, and they would just kind of picked a little zany. This is definitely not a good representation of what they would usually pick in game 3 of a grand finals, where
Sure.
it decides whether they win or lose. So I think that's something important to just kind of throw out there to everyone watching. Now, Orangutan do pick crazy stuff here and there, but not
But
like
full
this.
score
Not like
comp like this. I mean, Golgan
yeah,
Greeted, Dodrio,
yeah,
Sableye. Like this
yeah,
is this is score comp to its fullest.
yeah. A new evolution with the Dojo and Sableye, right? Last time it was mostly just Greedent.
Spraggles, do we see score comp at Worlds?
I can't imagine there'd be any way. I mean, maybe Korea, are they still doing it? I don't know what they're up to.
I don't think they are. But yes, you are right. They are the offenders of score comp for sure. So we'll have to see.
Who was that EU team that was playing score comp in like AOS Cup or I think it was AOS Cup, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Was it Warlord?
Regional
Yeah,
finals.
Warlords. Yeah, Warlords.
That was fun. That was surprisingly fun, but no, yeah, I don't think we see it.
Yeah, fun is
I remember the days where like Scorecom would come out and we're like, not this again. But then now I think if Scorecom comes out, I'm gonna be very happy actually. It'll be a cool little, because it'll be so hard to pull off. How are you gonna make it work? Like
yeah,
Buddy
it's the
Barrier
most
isn't what
fun way to lose a game of Unite. It's great.
yeah, Buddy Barrier Score Shield is not what it used to be for sure. Haven't seen
No.
that hell item in
Thankfully.
forever.
Thankfully.
Yeah,
You
man.
remember everyone just pressed their Unite move and
It
then
was so boring. Everyone would have shields thicker than their health bars, and
I
the
know.
fight would just rage for like 10 minutes.
yeah, like all right, we'll fight again in a minute. Just chill,
Yeah.
and then you all
Yeah.
run
By
back.
the time you work through the shields, the Unite moves are back up. You're like, all right.
You know, I will say though, this comp, the Orangutan comp, they're like maybe a one Greedent switch away from being a comp that I actually like really like. Like
Yeah.
I think we saw this from NA, the Dodrio plus like the Sableye kind of like annoyance deal, or at least it was like Sableye plus Speedster, and then they've got like I mean they've got Mew Lapras, like that's a gangster, like that's super good. So like honestly, if they had like one maybe switch like to not fully commit to this super annoying comp, I mean, I kind of like it. I kind of like don't hate it as much as I could right now. I mean, I get the idea of it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've been talking up Tempest so much. I just need to prove it. The reaction
Yeah.
skills on this kid, cracked on the sticks. I hope he's a Switch player because watch Mew Boosted. Mew Boosted comes in, immediately just like yoinks right in front of it every time. I
Yeah.
love watching good Snorlax players so much. Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, I mean this it's cool, right? Because
Yeah,
like
he goes
JR Edson essentially he's leading the beast, like this experienced captain, and I guess just kind of figure in PH he's picked up this crack tank player. He's like, yo, follow me into the central area and just let's just run an absolute rampage on there.
We'll take care of it. Yeah, just
yeah,
follow.
well, you get him, boss, and then he's just like
That's
belly flopping in. Yeah,
I
that's-
like
that's
it.
kinda what
I like it
Yeah.
a lot.
Sure. I mean, this entire tournament, I think for Omo Abyssinian, apart from Tempest, he's definitely one of the standouts. He was extremely pivotal to essentially a lot of that success, getting a lot of momentum from the early stage, as you'll see here. I mean, no better Pokemon to do it on than what he was playing, which was the Dojo, and I mean, a very good option secondary as well as the Zoroark, right?
Yeah, makes sense. If you had to kind of like So let's say you are cheering on APAC East at Worlds, Perma. You're like, I am waving the biggest flag for this team. What do you think is like the biggest strength as a region? Like, what do you think they're a little bit different than everybody else? Like, what's kind of the shining light? I mean, I know the three teams at the top are pretty different from each other, so that's kind of tough to lock down on one. But if you had to kind of narrow it down to maybe one or two things, what do you think APAC East is like really good at?
Okay, I just think that yeah, that's
Oh my word! Oh, I love
yeah,
Zoroark.
yeah, and he ain't even done. I think he gets a triple.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
He
goes back for
Sure, get in there. There we go. That's
yeah,
what I like to
go.
see.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think okay. This is I don't know whether this is a cop out answer, but I think APAC East and maybe even APAC as a whole, it's gonna be. I think the strength is gonna be that there's a lot of chaos that usually happens within the games, and it's not as clean and clear cut. Like I think that whenever I watch you guys cast the NA games or some of the series that we see, sure there's a good load of insanity and crazy picks that come out from time to time, but in terms of how disorganized or how chaotic things can get, like for example, in game number 1, they essentially it at the 2-minute mark decided to start fighting at the basement Reggie. Like where you will never see that because there's a higher, not that there's no discipline from the APAC East teams, but it's just different set of priorities, right? I think for the Western teams there's a higher emphasis on just kind of all these set objectives that everyone has already sort of lined up. Like we're gonna play there's a certain textbook that you follow in terms of the flow of the game, and there isn't really much breakaway from that. I think there's a lot of propensity for that to be different, specifically for APAC East, as you can kind of already see. I know this game is a bad representation, but I think
no, I don't think so. But yeah, I
you won't watch an APAC East game and you'll be like, "Yep, everything's going all according to the formula, all according to the plan." It's like always something a little bit spicy for sure.
Okay, plans always go awry.
I mean, honestly, again, Orangutan's not like doing bad. They've got the overall EXP lead. They've got the score lead. It's not like the worst thing I've ever seen. You know, it's not like an obvious like throw or anything.
WonderChef trying real hard to pivot this thing.
No, I mean, I'm just looking at the game state, right? I mean, look at it. They're all level 10. Like Almo Obsidian just caught up. Yeah. Obviously, they have like weird, not non-existent team fight kind of, but yeah. But look, it's working. They're up by like over 100 points.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw a lot of these annoying Sableye comps at NAIC. So all I'm saying is there's something to them, you know.
That is true.
Okay,
that is true. Maybe you're right. All right, Spriggles. He check of where the Content Cowboy is on this orangutan composition.
Look, I love to see it. We all agree that it's very weird. And that's kind of cool. Look. Sometimes pulling out something that your opponents don't play against can be a valuable choice. And as you said, if they're on extreme ping, there might be a lot of more, I don't know. Wow.
Snorlax.
This is the moment.
Wow, Dojo really is countered by everything, huh?
Yeah.
It's really literally every release. You can look at a move in every single release that counters this Pokemon. It's ridiculous.
Not even real. I mean, Snorlax just shut him down with block.
Yeah. It was crazy because I think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we remember talking to Tempest after this, and he's like, I just learned that did that. He didn't know. He kind of put it up, and he kind of put that up on instinct, like trying to basically defend his team. And then he blocked it. He was like, oh, okay. And he just completely ruined that Dojo's day.
Yeah.
I'm curious. We talked about what you think maybe their biggest strength is. What do you think something that as a region they're kind of lacking is?
I think it's been very rare to see good bounce backs. I think it's a byproduct of the format, right? I think you guys mentioned earlier on that for the Western side, usually for these grand finals or these more important series, it's best of 5. We haven't really seen and this is something I'm scared about because obviously Worlds is going to be a whole lot of different pressure. Some of these teams that are now sort of getting the chance to compete on the world stage, they are going to be basically walking into their first LAN event, right, for Pokemon Unite. Because not all of these teams were at ACL. So with that in mind, I think there's one thing I'm worried about for the region is the overall resilience, right? Like they aren't as practiced on a LAN environment. They haven't really been sort of historically known to pull off these insane comebacks. I know Orangutan, they definitely have that grit in them. And Omo Abyssinian, of course, they have that LAN experience, so that's going to come in very handy. But that's what I would be most concerned about for the teams coming from this region. I don't know whether they have you need a certain level of thick skin, right, to be able to survive these grueling competitions and be down one game and still sort of think like we still got this in the bag, guys. Like it takes a real leader, it takes a real sort of the right mentality, and I'm not sure whether that's something that the teams here has practiced in.
That makes sense. And I mean, it's crazy what's going to happen with groups anyway. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath day one. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just going to
however
be
they line them
insane.
up. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna be wild. Ice. Okay, if Ice gets the knockout on a Chandelier there, all of a sudden I'm a fan of the green pick. I was so close. Last voice I set everybody up, and Chandelier gets it. Seriously, that was like a frame away from them being able to knock out Chandelier. That was close. Do you say that Louise?
I say Louise.
Louise. Okay.
I'm sure it's I don't think we ended up getting clarification on how exactly that's pronounced, but I don't think you can necessarily go too wrong with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think demonstrated in most of these games, and if you just kind of watch the other game that they were on stream on, Omo Abyssinian, it just kind of feels like they're team fighting, and basically the front to back, that's what stood out the most to us. Like they were as close to what I would consider like textbook. Like they didn't really have any moments where it felt like, oh, what is this Omo Abyssinian player doing? No, like everyone was in sync. Everyone knew exactly what they were doing at all times. Some of these moves, like for example, sacrificing the Hoopa to try and get the steal while they were playing the other side of the map, just felt like they were completely aware of what they needed to do at every stage of the game, and it was just kind of.
I think you're bang on there, Permasneeze, because I mean they've played multiple different play styles in just this one matchup, right? We saw the death ball composition in game number 1. In this one, we're playing a little bit of like Protect the President with double tank around Chandelier Zoroark. Like they're playing really peel focused defender. Like Omo Obsidian is definitely comfortable with like multiple different styles of comp. So that's really cool. Hey, dance party, no BM. It's good. Cool. Yeah, I think that's a big shining factor of Abyssinian. My apologies.
There we go.
I already did it wrong.
I think this is I think just to go back to sort of the historical record of this team has components, Shua, Miva, and JR Epson of basically one of the teams that made Scorecom look insane when it first rose to prominence, right? Like this was in Winter Tournament once again. So what I'm trying to say is not that we'll see Scorecom necessarily, but I think it shows a lot of growth that now that they're back, they have that range, right? Because previously it kind of felt like, take away Scorecom from them after the patch had passed, they couldn't really find their footing. So this really, to us at least, as people who followed the region for quite a bit, it showed a lot of I guess player development and just kind of they've leveled up now for sure. Cool. Because you're no longer like a one patch or one meta team. You have figured it out. You have multiple different strategies that work. That shows flexibility. That shows like you've practiced across the board instead of just kind of pigeonholing into one winning strategy. And if it eventually gets broken, then what are you going to do, right? So I think that's what really impressed us about this team.
Cool. Well, that's gonna bring us to the end of our actual VOD review. Any final notes you want to throw in on what we just watched there, WonderChef?
Can I note in that last moment, it didn't really matter, but it was a really good play where Schwa walked onto the pad and then turned around so that Ikura couldn't walk up and unite and send them back and get in any score. Obviously, the score didn't matter at that point, but that was still like super smart. But no, nothing too much to add. I think we talked about most of it there.
Yeah.
Big value on Hoopa, huge value on Hoopa. I think it was like first picked like twice and then second picked once. So that's pretty big. Yeah,
when we watched Japan, it was like permabanned. I don't know. I think Hoopa is definitely going to be high priority when we head to Worlds for sure. Spraggles, how about you? Any final notes here on APAC East?
Hard, because I mean these comps are a little wild, so I don't really know what to say as much about that. If they play this at Worlds, they're gonna get completely wrecked, but I don't think they're going to. So
sure.
I understand the situation behind it. It's just a little weird to watch.
I
but
think
outside of that,
comps have been really good. Like I think we have fried Abyssinians for sure.
Omo Abyssinian's comps have been good. Orangutan's comps are just kind of chaos, which is fine for the situation. We'll have to see what they bring. And then my only other thought is it's just really interesting watching this on this particular patch because everyone's going to be playing on a different patch. So you have to wonder what's really going to happen when they all finally get together. I think one of the biggest things that's going to separate kind of the people who stay in groups and the people who move to the top 8 is going to be what region actually can figure out the meta. So it'll be interesting to see what APAC brings for that, you know?
Yeah. What answer you have to the meta is going to be really interesting. The best part about, I mean, unfortunately our tournament's only 2 days, but like day 1 will absolutely influence day 2 meta. I think like we are going to see a couple of teams do really well in groups, and then all of a sudden a lot of teams that made it to bracket but weren't playing like that in day 1 are now going to be playing that in day 2. I think that's a pretty common thing. But
how many teams do you think are going to be able to pivot like that though? Because if you've made it to top 8, you've outlasted most of the competition in the entire tournament. I mean, is that really when you, as a team that has already gone through the kind of grinder of groups, are you really going to try to change your strategy last minute on the world stage? I don't know.
Well,
I wonder.
I mean, it depends. What does the enemy team make you? Like, are you forced into like being outdrafted by the enemy team? Like, are they trying to take away that same composition? Are you forced into a new angle, or are you getting all the picks you want because they're safe? Like, are you ready to play against that comp? Yeah, the meta answer is going to be really, really interesting. I mean, we have no idea what's end up going to be played. Obviously, the only announcement we have is that there are no bans so far, but of course that's subject to change. We'll have to see what comes from that in a few weeks. Permasneeze, how about you? Any final things you want to say about APAC East?
Before I get there, since I have the privilege of being in the same room as Worlds casters, I want to know, do you guys think Mewtwo is going to be banned for Worlds?
That's so funny you asked that. This is literally exactly what I was going to ask you guys.
You gotta ask. You gotta ask.
I think here's the thing. If Mewtwo is in the state that it's in, it will be banned every single game. But I don't know if that means they have to ban it out from the tournament.
Okay,
I don't know.
Let me jump onto that. I think if that is the genuine case where we believe that it will always be banned, I do believe it will be banned by UCS for Worlds. I mean, the only precedent we have is ACL. Zacian was banned every single game of the entire tournament and was therefore banned from all competitions until it received changes. I think that if they don't want that situation again. I guarantee it. Like I can't ever see that happen. I do think Mewtwo in the state that it's in probably will not be allowed. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I just feel like if you allow Mewtwo in the tournament, like in the state that it's currently in, I know so it's been great, right? Because they've already sort of addressed some of the initial sort of downfall. But you know, even with the changes, I feel like it's not enough, as I'm sure we all agree. I think it will take away a lot of the competition, like the competition's value, just because it's another situation where, oh yeah, okay, we just have to permaban this. Suddenly, this new implementation of draft is a bit, you know, janky, because you always have to ban it out, and then you play this mind game of like, oh, do we want to let it in? If we're the second pick team, we basically have to ban it out. If not, it's going to be we're not going to get it and whatnot. Yeah, it's just going to be, honestly, it would take away a lot of the excitement, I think, if it was allowed, because it wouldn't be fun to watch if Mewtwo just completely rolls over everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that like it would be good, in my opinion, like if I got to choose everything, which obviously I get to choose nothing, I would have just said out the gate it's banned because A, like there's still a chance that we run into some big bugs in the next few weeks. B, there's a chance that even after it's nerfed, that what if it gets another nerf? What if it gets nerfed to the ground in 1 week from now? And suddenly we're like 1 week away from Worlds, and all these teams that have been practicing Mewtwo comps are like, well, now we've got 4 days, you know, minus travel to suddenly rework our comps because this Pokemon was too strong and we thought we were gonna have to use it, and now we don't think we're gonna have to use it. So I would have just set like a base level where it's like, okay, everything before Mewtwo, sure. Everything after Mewtwo, let's just say no.
Yeah, that makes sense actually, because if you, but they haven't said anything yet, right?
No announcements yet or anything like that. Yeah,
it makes sense, but I gotta be honest, I'm sick of it. Like, if the Pokemon's in the game and I have to play against it, then it should play. I get what we did with Zacian, but I'm just a little frustrated if the Pokemon's legal for everybody else, if I've got to play with it in solo queue, why couldn't TTV handle it? Why couldn't Omo Abyssinian handle it if I
Yeah,
have
you
to
guys-
play against it?
You guys won the regionals.
It's
You can deal with it.
But it's because you could pick it on both sides or whatever, right? Is the gross? I don't like saying it, but is the answer kind of?
That makes sense. I'm being silly. But
No, I don't think you're being silly at all. I think that is a
know.
very valid, very, very valid thing to say. I just like, I don't
But
know.
I don't know. I would love it to play. I wish they nerfed it a little. I know they're not going to. There's no time. I just wish they nerfed it a little harder. If it was power level of Zacian now, I think it would be very reasonable, because I honestly think Zacian's not going to get that much priority.
Oh, it's B tier. I think it's like, I don't think you can play it. I don't think you can pick it early in draft. I think you pick it late, but it has to be into like, I think it's a great death ball counter. Like, how do you charge a Zacian when they just like create a giant circle on the ground that just says "you die here"? Like, I don't think you can. It's a very different playstyle of Zacian than kind of on paper you'd think. But I do think it'll be played. But you're right. I don't think it has high draft priority at all. Which is an interesting spot to be.
But that would just be so cool. Wouldn't it be so cool if Mewtwo was there too? Like, even make it as one of the best Pokemon. Fine, one of the best, but not this good.
But I mean, and then that's the other side of the argument, right? I mean, this is all content we're throwing into a VOD review piece, but that's fine. Like, the other side of that coin is we're gonna have permabans. Like, I mean, Umbreon, Slowbro, Hoopa, like, these Pokemon are going to be banned a lot of the games, if not the overwhelming majority. Is it really so bad if Mewtwo is also just in that category, and then like we can all freak out the one game it makes it in and then probably dominates? Like, is it so bad? It probably is. It probably is that bad.
Let it play. Let it play.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I honestly think whatever. Like, there's some very, very powerful Pokemon in the game right now. That letting it through it's just maybe whatever. We'll have to see, though. We'll definitely have to see. Future time. But to bring it back to APAC East, my final thoughts on this region. It's a region I've really been looking forward to watching playing on a world stage. Personally, I think it's been a little bit of a slept-on region. Perma, I totally agree with like the strengths you've talked about them. They do play a lot of wild picks, but Spragos, you were also mentioning, if you're not practicing against those, maybe those will be the tools that they can leverage. But I don't know. From what I've seen of Orangutan in the past and what I've seen from OMO Abyssinian in this game, I think we have some really mechanically skilled players. If they can, really stick together in a world stage and not crumble under pressure, I think this will be a really, really strong region and potentially like top 8 contenders out of these top 3 teams. So I think we're in a really cool spot. Let's just do a quick round of plugs from everybody's socials and whatnot before we head out of here. So Spragos, how about you? Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on the YouTubes and the Twitches and the TikToks and the Kicks and all the places that I can stream Pokemon Unite. Spraggles, at Spraggles.
Fantastic. WonderChef, how about you?
I am unfortunately on the artist formerly known as Twitter as EGP WonderChef and everywhere else as EGP WonderChef. So follow me there.
Cool. Permasneeze, how about you?
Similar situation. You can find me at Permasneeze on most social media platforms. Now I'm on. Is it called X? Do we say X now?
X.
It's just uncomfortable.
It is.
Yeah, but I'm mostly on the platform formerly known as Twitter and on Twitch here and there. That's where you can find me. Also want to give a quick shout out, if I may, to the rest of the APAC crew. I think generally APAC is not as exposed to the Western audience as much as maybe there's opportunity to. So really appreciative to Zoinks and Unite Mics for basically pulling us in here and letting us showcase what we have to the world. And hopefully, these teams from East and West and Korea and Japan and India even can put on a good showing for Worlds. Yeah, excited to see them play.
Yeah, I can't wait. Your expertise is so appreciated. So thank you so much for being our guest expert on APAC East and joining in.
Thank you.
If you want to follow all of our stuff, to those of you who are watching, at Unite Mics on Twitter, and of course Unite Mics on YouTube. And if you're watching this one on YouTube, make sure in the comments to let us know, what do you think is the best strength of APAC East? And maybe, if you're like Spraggles, what do you think is their biggest weakness? Have some fun debating that one down in the comments below. Until next time, we'll see you all later. Everybody, have a great rest of your night. Goodbye.